Okay, feel free to get started.
Well, greetings and welcome, friends, colleagues, students, and fellow activists all over the world. I'm Andrew Apter, currently the interim director of the James S. Coleman African Studies Center at UCLA, where I also teach history, anthropology, African studies, and international development studies. I myself have conducted the majority of my research in Nigeria, but I've also worked in Senegal and Zambia, and I'm directing a collaborative project in Ghana. Anyway, it gives me really great pleasure to open the road, or shiona, as we say in Yoruba, for this important forum on Africa's readiness for climate change, and to also invoke ASHU's cooperation and support for this endeavor. May he minimize our technological glitches and maximize our collective impact. ASHU is perhaps the most critical spirit in the Yoruba pantheon of deities, because he or she, since ASHU is notoriously non-binary, has the mischievous capacity to turn things upside down, and also serves as the primary conduit to the other Yoruba gods, or Orisha. So I would say, ASHU Laro Odowe, which means, ASHU Laro, it is in your hands. So I've done my job now in opening the road, at least as far as honoring ASHU. I'd also like to open this road by invoking another critical spirit as well, that of Karl Marx, who famously wrote in his 11th thesis on Feuerbach that, quote, philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. One doesn't have to be a Marxist to realize that our current crisis of global warming and climate change calls for immediate and effective action, but it doesn't hurt. This is because capitalism, especially unleashed in its current neoliberal mutation, is a big part of the problem. More so because fossil fuels still lubricate our energy markets and transportation sectors. And the industry is backed by powerful lobbies that shape domestic and foreign policy, pour money into elections, influence international relations, and even start wars. The larger point is that our global economy and ecology are inextricably linked. And if I've worked on Shell BP's impact on the Niger Delta, and if you've worked on the politics of the Mexican petrostate, we are all dealing with connected trends. So what is to be done? Our forum focuses on Africa because we are Africanists with multiple types of experience and expertise, and because Africa is the continent most dramatically affected by climate change, as rising temperatures and falling water tables undermine regional carrying capacities, especially in the Sahel. And that intensifies food insecurity and political conflict more widely. Our ARC forum is necessarily interdisciplinary because we aim to capture the manifold dimensions of the current climate crisis in order to help craft effective solutions. The expertise represented by our keynote speakers, panelists, exhibitors, and global audience not only represents the academic and professional divisions of the Academy, ranging from arts and sciences, health sciences, schools of management, education, and engineering, but also cuts across them. I don't have time to run through these productive interdisciplinary knowledge partnerships, but I would like to highlight three principal priorities that distinguish this forum from similar colloquia. First, we emphasize that Africans working in Africa are the experts leading the continent's struggle against climate change. Africans like Elizabeth Wathuti, Nemo Bassi, Usman Pam, and His Excellency Siddiq Y are luminaries among those on the ground conducting path-breaking work on knowledge dissemination, green entrepreneurship, eco-village development, and regenerative design. And in many respects, our forum provides a platform to receive reports from the field on current projects, their challenges, setbacks, and most importantly, successes. African Studies at UCLA is not deaf to the condescending tone and racialized history of Western aid discourses, like those that are pervading the World Bank, the IMF, and USAID, for example. We're not tone deaf to the language of assisting the once called dark continent, and we're not afraid to challenge and change that history. This forum is not a space for Western experts to tell Africans what to do, but quite the opposite. to learn from the African experts about their conceptual breakthroughs and innovative work being done. We are all in this together, but the discursive playing field has not been equal and needs much recalibration. Which brings me to our second priority, to build where relevant on indigenous knowledge, including traditional approaches to the environment, by looking at practices, historical trajectories, vernacular lexicons, epistemological frameworks, and even what some are calling now geo-ontologies, ontologies of the earth. In an area where Western experts have cast traditional cultures as impediments to progress and development, we are now seeing a much needed counter trend of building back better on indigenous epistemological foundations. Not a return to a pristine golden age, which is generally a bad idea, but a reworking of indigenous epistemologies and practices to develop more effective solutions to climate change. Two recent books that signal this shift are economist Felwine Sarr's Afrotopia and development economist Chika Ezeanya Isiobu's Indigenous Knowledge and Education in Africa. And third, we seek a more expanded, socially and culturally informed concept of infrastructure as the connective tissue of climate change solutions, one that includes but also transcends the roads, grids, bridges, banks, towers, cables, pipelines, and power lines that are conventionally associated with the term, to embrace cultural discourses, political relations, narratives, and even aesthetics that mediate the permeable membranes, to take a metaphor from biology, of communication between state and civil society, local, regional, and global economic sectors, and most crucially, between social systems and the ecosystems that they actually inhabit. These relations are largely dialectical, to invoke Marx once again, but they extend beyond the reductive relations of production that he himself designated by the term infrastructure. And finally, a word of thanks to those who helped make this ARC Forum happen. A glance at all of the logos at the bottom of our program will make it clear that it would take considerable time to simply mention all of our co-sponsors by name, but we are grateful for their support. But I do have to single out my staff for their Herculean labors, our center's deputy director, Erica Anjum, our administrative officer, Sheila Breeding, and our student assistant, Christina Williams. I also have to call out our partners at the Earth Rights Institute for their extraordinary work over the last 2 years in making this happen. Its founder and executive director, Annie de la Bourigeki, a major figure in the Green Party with whom we've worked for over 11 years, and her incredible volunteers, including not just UCLA students, but UC students on different campuses. In many ways, this ARC Forum is a tribute to her over 30-year career in this field. Thank you, Team Annie. And thank you very much. So now I'd like to pass the baton to Annie and co-introduce this ARC Forum.
Oh, thank you so much, Andrew. Well, welcome everyone to people near and far all over the world. As I'm Anne de la Bourigeki, but I'm better known as Annie Geki. I've lived in Africa for several years and traveled to many countries throughout the continent, always with deep love and connection. I am now currently living on Tongva land, located in Santa Monica, California. I am the co-founder and director of Earth Rights Institute, a nonprofit organization founded in 2001. Our organization has an innovative approach to collectively collaborate on initiatives using the bottom-up grassroots community efforts to join top-down government and policymakers in building a culture of peace and in addressing issues such as climate change, sustainability, justice, fair economics, and well-being. Earth Rights Institute has an ongoing collaboration with UCLA that also had included a 2010 study abroad program in Senegal. We have been working with our African colleagues since 2003, and under the directorship of Professor Tramen Toure, we have an extensive climate action plan to transition Abidjan, the largest city in Cote d'Ivoire, into an eco-city designed by Africans. Today, it pleases me so much to be given this opportunity by UCLA, and particularly our friends, the African Studies Center, to take climate action seriously and allow us to introduce these noteworthy, extraordinary, and accomplished individuals from Africa who are forging a new path towards sustainability. As Africa's youth population becomes the largest in the world, we, global citizens, need to partner with our African brothers and sisters on climate action if we are to succeed in our objectives. It's our responsibility to roll up our sleeves, find ways to collaborate, and to never give up doing the work that needs to be done. If this pandemic has taught us anything, it is that we are all one and must work together. So we're offering this forum to you as an inspiring, fun, and informative way to listen, connect, and partner. In particular, for you young people, you'll have a chance to come together and discover your path as development leaders and change makers. Earth Rights Institute looks forward to continuing actionable plans with UCLA for the next 5 years. We are open for business and hope to hear from you beyond this conference. Our program for the next 5 days is full of inspiring and varied topics around climate change. We purposely designed this forum to bring in different aspects into discussion so that we are able to offer something for everyone, no matter what your background or interest. Today, we start with a focus on youth leadership, as our keynote speaker talks about mobilizing African youth for climate action and conservation. We follow it with a panel and end our day with a golden opportunity to meet with others around sustainability in the student-hosted virtual networking gallery from 12 to 2 p.m. We hope you can take advantage and stay for the whole time. Tomorrow, our focus is on environmental justice, energy, infrastructures, and indigenous frameworks. Our keynote speaker will talk about the challenge of technology in the quest for environmental justice, followed by 2 panels. From 3 to 5 tomorrow, we urge everyone to observe the Design Thinking Jam session, an interactive student workshop facilitated by an expert. And they'll be discussing 120 minutes to change the world. Are you in? Wednesday, we cover the issues around climate refugees and regenerative communities. Our keynote speaker will address these topics, followed by a panel. Thursday is our Earth Day storytelling event hosted by the UCLA students, the Bruin Home Solutions Group, an exciting program of exchanging stories from all 4 of our African keynote speakers, including a special piece on stories about the Black goddess. And finally, on Friday, our topic is on business, politics, and culture around climate action. Our keynote speaker, Ambassador from Sierra Leone, will discuss emerging economic opportunities for a green Africa, followed by a panel. And ending our forum with closing remarks and the path forward. It is an honor for us to be part of this larger movement during Earth Week 2021 as co-hosts for the first forum on Africa's readiness for climate change. So let us begin by my introducing our first keynote speaker. Are we ready?
We are ready. Just give me 1 second to swap out who is being recorded.
Okay, thank you. All right. Elizabeth Wathuti from Kenya. But before I begin, I want to give a little backstory. Probably before Elizabeth was born, I too planted trees in Kenya with someone very, very special. A person that inspired Elizabeth to be the person she is today. Wangari Maathai, the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize and who has sadly left us, but her spirit shines bright, as you will see by meeting Elizabeth. I wonder today how my trees that were planted in Nairobi and in other communities nearby are growing today. Are they big and strong like Elizabeth Wathuti? Elizabeth is a passionate environmentalist and climate activist from Kenya. She's the founder of the Green Generation Initiative and the head of campaigns and coordinator of Diana Daima Coalition for the Protection of Urban Green Spaces. She is the full member of the Green Belt Movement, board member of the Elephant Neighbors Center, and a youth council member of the International Reserva. The Youth Land Trust, due to her outstanding passion, leadership, and personal commitment to environmental conservation and societal issues, she received the Wangari Maathai's Scholarship Award from the Greenbelt Movement, Kenya Community Development Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation. She has previously served as the chairperson of Kenyatta's University Environmental Club and holds a bachelor degree in environmental studies and community development. She has been honored internationally with the Diana Award 2019 for going above and beyond in her daily life to create and sustain positive change. Her environmental conservation efforts are also recognized by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Elizabeth was a regional finalist for the Africa for the UN Young Champion of the Earth 2019 due to the impact that Green Generation Initiative, which nurtures young people to be conscious of the environment while promoting green projects, has had. While attending the Climate Change Conference of Parties, the COP25 in Madrid, she received the Young Climate Champion 2019 award from the Green Climate Fund. She was also named by the Commonwealth as a regional finalist for Africa and Europe for the 2020 Commonwealth Youth Awards for Excellence in Development Work. Elizabeth has showcased her climate action solutions in over 10 high-level international conferences, such as the Global Landscape Forum in Germany, the International Seminar on Sustainable Regions in Spain, and also the UNFCCC Resilient Frontiers Conference that took place in South Korea in 2019. No Planet B International Forum in Lisbon, and the United Nations Development Program, and more. And recently on the BBC television, being honored by Prince Charles for their Commonwealth Day 2021. So I'm so pleased and so excited to have Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Annie, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak in this forum today. It's a great honor to be sharing today about mobilizing African youth for climate action and conservation. For me, nature has been my learning place, and it is through nature that I got to discover my passion for conservation. I know that I have had times when I have even have to grieve the destruction of my forest landscape. And this is because as a child, I got a rare opportunity to love nature and to spend time among trees. And of course, being able to have grown up in the most forested region in Kenya. And my favorite place was sitting among the trunks of the trees and watching the clean streams and rivers flowing. And it still is my favorite place. Have always been a part of the forest, and what hurts nature hurts me too. And every time that I witness nature's destruction, it's always devastating. And I would say right now, with the ongoing trends in the world, it's devastating to just see how networks of trees are being cut down around the world, and how the streams have also become highways for plastic waste. And for me, witnessing deforestation and pollution at first hand did not only make me sad about how humanity has been treating nature, but it also made me angry enough to want to do something about these challenges and about climate change. And of course, it would be devastating for everyone to witness the destruction of the very place that you have always seen as the most pristine, and the very place that you've always seen as beautiful, and the place that has always directly connected you with nature. And climate change, I know, affects everyone, but one thing that the world needs to know is that climate change does not affect everyone equally. Africa has been the most hit by the impacts of climate change. And at the same time, Africa has the most youthful population in the world. And for African countries like mine, the climate crisis is no longer a future concern. We are feeling the impacts every day, and even during this pandemic. And it's clear that the climate crisis has definitely not stopped for COVID-19, which means that action should also not delay. And when I say that the impacts of the climate crisis are happening every day, it's because I have witnessed people who have to deal with the worst impacts every day, and have also had to deal with the worst impacts of climate change, from the droughts to the acute water shortages to the challenges of desert locust invasion. And all of these challenges are affecting the African continent greatly, and even challenges to do with food insecurity. And it is important to share a specific story of things that I have witnessed, being able to go to places where people have to deal with these worst impacts of climate change. I know we say that women are the most hit by the climate crisis, and that they are the ones that have to walk for long distances in search of water or food for their families. And there is one instance where I recently visited Samburu County, and this is a region in Kenya. And I remember seeing a woman with 3 little children from a far distance. And it got me thinking, why were they in that place? And they were in a place that was supposed to be a stream, but that stream from a distance was a totally dry land. And I walked closer to them, and I found the woman digging a hole to look for water for her children. And to my surprise, the water that she was trying to look for in this hole was not even safe for consumption. And she had walked for about 12 miles to get to that place so that her children could get some water to drink. And it's definitely evident that the crisis is really affecting people right now, especially now that we are in the middle of a pandemic. And this tells you that there are people around the world that have to deal with the two crises, both the COVID-19 and the climate crisis. And young people in the African continent, of course, have also been stepping up, and they've been taking action to let the world leaders and everyone know that we have to address the climate crisis right now. And our message to the world leaders has always been very simple, that we need to act now. And what needs to be done, as we have always mentioned, is to first stop investing in fossil fuels now. And also, secondly, we need to massively increase investments in regenerating nature. And this means that we also need to keep all our remaining natural ecosystems intact, and also start actively regenerating the enormous swaths of land that we have degraded around the world. Because really, we cannot be able to say that we'll have a safe future and a livable world without nature. And while all of this is happening, much of the action that is required for a global response to the climate crisis is already taking place or being influenced in Africa by young people. And young Africans like myself and so many others out there are on the front line of climate action and tapping into their passion, their skills, and the little available resources to speak up for climate action and mobilize for nature-based solutions. When I founded Green Generation Initiative in 2016, I wanted to address the challenges like deforestation and climate change that I have always witnessed at firsthand. And these are challenges that have definitely heartbroken me, because I have grown up knowing nature as my home. I've grown up knowing nature as a place that should be left in its most pristine. And witnessing these landscapes that I value the most getting degraded and getting destroyed one at a time really is something that would definitely break the heart of everyone who has had that strong connection to nature. And so for me, being able to connect to nature has been something that I've valued, and I know that it is going to help everyone, and especially the young people and the children, be able to appreciate our natural resources and also be able to have that natural call to action to want to do something about the challenges that are around us right now. And when I founded this initiative, my main aim was to nurture more young people to have that same love for nature and for them to be able to connect directly with the natural resources and with nature. Because my first action as a climate activist, as an environmentalist as well, was when I planted my first tree when I was 7 years old. And this act to me made me just realize how much of the essential services of nature that the entire human race fails to appreciate. And if we do not recognize that without nature, then as humanity, we cannot be able to even continue with our day-to-day living, and we cannot be able to say that the future is going to be safe for the next generations, then it is going to be challenging for the world to address challenges like the climate crisis. So for me, I have always seen nature as a solution, because nature is home, and we have to also appreciate that nature-based solutions can even awaken our mindsets, and they can awaken the way in which we understand and value nature. And so through this initiative, I started a campaign that I dubbed Adopt a Tree campaign. And of course, this is linked to the fact that it was through a tree, through being able to spend time among trees and being able to co-create with nature by planting a tree, that I continued to appreciate the value of nature. And so this Adopt a Tree campaign focuses on making sure that every child in every school in my country gets a chance to plant and adopt a tree in their school compound. And this, of course, is a win-win solution, because it is beyond just planting a tree, because millions of trees are being planted around the world. But the big question we should always ask ourselves is, how many of the trees being planted around the world get to grow up to maturity? And so this Adopt a Tree campaign inculcates a tree growing culture among young people, so that we can be able to increase the country's forest cover, which currently stands at about 7.3%. And this is below the 10% UN required minimum for the forest cover in any country. And for me, I believe in being a part of the solution in hitting and surpassing this forest cover. And so this program has always really inspired a lot of young people to be able to appreciate nature and to connect with nature. And it has also been able to change the mindsets of people, that you do not have to have grown up in the most forested region like I did for you to be a part of the solution in conserving nature. And you do not have to have been born in the forest landscapes or close to clean streams for you to understand and appreciate the value of nature. Sometimes the challenges that we encounter are the ones that really make us understand the value that we are missing out from being able to conserve nature. And like I've mentioned, it is through the challenges that I witnessed of my landscapes being destroyed one at a time that made me also want to do something about these challenges. And so this initiative, so far, we've been able to grow over 30,000 tree seedlings, and they've had an impact and a survival rate of about 99%. And this means that by being able to make sure that the young children are growing the trees and they are making sure that these trees grow up to maturity, then we are also increasing the country's forest cover, which is a solution I believe that the world should also be turning to as we talk about nature regeneration, because we've continued to lose so much of the wild forest right now. And when we focus on nature regeneration, then we have to look at tree growing for impact and not just planting trees and not minding about how those trees are going to survive at the end of the day. And then the other thing that we focus on at the initiative is making sure that we are providing practical environmental education to the young people. And this is beyond the knowledge that we give to the young people. And this is about making sure that the young people and the children understand the complexity of the challenges that the world is in right now by practically involving them and showing them what is happening to the world. And I will give a practical example of when we are training the children about the challenges of pollution. We will take them to the nearest stream around them that is actually polluted, and they will be able to see what is happening to our waterways. They'll be able to see what is happening to our rivers, to our lakes. And by that, they'll be able to have a mindset that really provokes them, or rather that makes them want to do something about these challenges. And there's one time that I took children to a stream, and I always love telling this story. And when I took them to this stream that was just close to their school, and they saw how the stream was just flowing with plastic waste, and the smell from the stream could clearly tell that it was in a sad state. And of course, they learn in class that the water is supposed to be clear, but then this water that we were witnessing in this stream is brown in color and flowing with all of this plastic waste. And these children asked me, who did this? And they did not stop at that. They also asked me, what can we as children do about these challenges? Which tells you that sometimes when you look at the challenges around you, of course, there is that devastating feel that we all feel. We feel sad, we feel angry, but then it should never stop at that. It should stop at when you now decide to do something about these challenges. And that is where we move an extra step and now train the children about what can we then do about this pollution? How can we change and transform the face of this stream so that it can look differently in the next coming years? And when you see a place that used to be a forest and is now all destroyed, the trees are all fell down, what can we do to be able to regain its state? What can we all do to be able to make sure that it's back to its normal state? And so all of these are the things that we try to practically engage the children. And of course, letting them understand the impacts of climate change, and not just how bad it is, but also what they can do as young people to be able to address the impacts of climate change, and what they can do in terms of the little actions in their school compounds, and also actions around their communities, and what they can do to even hold the leaders accountable. And then along the way, while focusing on this project, we began to witness that the problem was even beyond the deforestation. The problem was also about the people that had to really witness these impacts, that the children around the schools that we were focusing on had to deal with other problems.
I think we just lost Elizabeth. All right, Elizabeth, you cut out for a second, so you might want to just restart from about 30 seconds ago.
All right, sorry about that. And so we really also witnessed that these challenges that were being faced were beyond the deforestation, and it was also about other complex challenges about the equality, and also challenges about how these children are also facing food insecurity. And so we realized that the environment and nature can be used to tackle so many other challenges. And so we thought around, how can we also use the tree growing aspect to address the challenge of food insecurity? And so we started to establish food forests around the school compound. And what this means is that we would pick designated corners of the school compound, and then in there plant mixed species of fruit trees around the school compound. And then these fruit trees would not only help in increasing the country's forest cover, but at the same time, they would also help in ensuring that the school's feeding program is supplemented, because fruit trees are a nutritious source of food for the children at the end of the day. And so this for us was a holistic approach to be able to not only address the challenge of climate change, but at the same time address the challenge of hunger, which is also an impact of the climate crisis. And so we have seen how this initiative has really continued to impact so many young people around the schools in Kenya. And of course, we are looking at it also in a way in which we can be able to reach out to many other regions around the country. And so right now we are also focusing on how we can have a model around the school compound, whereby this model is going to be a learning center where the children can really have all of these aspects incorporated, the aspect of tree growing, and also the aspect of the food forest, and the aspect of also making sure that we also implement projects like kitchen gardens around the school compound to make sure that children are also benefiting and also not having to deal with so much of the climate shocks, especially caused by food insecurity challenges. And so for me, I see this as a solution that really can be implemented across different regions, even beyond my country, because it is about the challenges that we are facing right now. And like I have mentioned, the challenges of climate change are no longer a future concern. These are things that are happening right now. And of course, we need to really also remember that everyone can be a part of the solution. And just to mention and highlight that this project so far has been able to impact over 20,000 school children in Kenya. And really, this is something that gives me hope every day, knowing that we are creating a generation of environmentally conscious individuals. And to me, I see this as an initiative that also really continues to change the narrative about young people, that young people are not just the population that are the most affected by the climate crisis, and they're not just the population that will have to live longer with the consequences of the world's inaction today, but young people are also stepping up to the challenge and are taking action to address the most pressing issue of our time, and that is the climate crisis. And so I believe that definitely we can continue to impact generations by realizing and recognizing the fact that young people are not just waiting to be given a seat at the table, but they are stepping up and they're really also taking action on the ground. And this really is just one among the many examples of projects around Africa and my country that young people are doing each and every day to make sure that we do not have to deal with the consequences of climate change. And it really tells you how much of solutions we can get from just being able to appreciate nature, because it is by appreciating nature that we begin to become mindful about how we will leave this planet for all generations to come. And it is also through appreciating the values that come with nature that we also begin to understand that nature is a solution for everything that we are talking about right now as the entire human race, and that without nature, then we will continue to face most of the challenges as the entire human race that are caused by interfering with the human human ecological balance. And I have also always believed in the power of young person that the late Professor Wangari Maathai has always espoused on. She always believed in the power of one person, that each one of us can make a difference, but then collectively we are a force. And I remember that she would always tell of the story of the hummingbird, that there was this forest that was in a huge fire, and all the animals, of course, are really sad that the forest is on fire. And that's really what is happening to the world right now. We are faced with so many animals of challenges, and then these animals are moving to the other side of the forest, and they're really sad that the only place that they call home is getting destroyed. And remember that the forest has got all of these animals like the elephants, the giraffes. These are huge animals. And except for this tiny little hummingbird that decided it was going to do something about the fire, which really inspires me every day. And this tiny little hummingbird decided to pick drops of water from the nearby stream, and it would fly back and forth, trying to put out the fire in the forest. And at this time, the other animals are mocking the little hummingbird and asking the hummingbird, what do you think you can do? You are too little, you only have a tiny beak. But this tiny little hummingbird decides to say words that really inspire me up to date. And it said that I am doing the best that I can. What are you doing? And really, this is a message that I like to pass on to every young person out there, that we are the people that are going to really also stand up for our future and stand up to shape the kind of planet that we want to see. And so we have to be involved. We have to make sure that we are getting engaged in conservation, and have to make sure that we are really participating in shaping the world for the better. And also we have to make sure that we are on the forefront in also holding our leaders accountable, because we are the ones who will live longer with these consequences, and we cannot afford to take a back seat and fold our hands. We are the generation that are going to shape this planet for the better. And I also want us to remember that for all of us to have fulfilling and healthy lives, we have to protect, restore, and conserve nature. And we cannot repeat the mistakes that previous generations committed, but we can hold our leaders accountable and also join in the action on the ground. So I do believe that really through this message that we will begin to do what is needed of us. And we've seen young people around the world are also taking up different actions, and also even teaching our leaders how we can also act responsibly to make sure that we are putting people and our planet above profits, because that is what is going to count in the end of it all if we are to have a livable world and a safe future. And also, we have to make sure that we are being mindful about how this planet is going to look like for our children, children. And at the end of the day, recognize that everyone has got a responsibility to conserve and also save this planet. And to every young person who is listening to me right now, as I finish, we have to be present in climate action and conservation now if we want to be present in a world that is livable and have a safe future. Thank you so much, and I'll appreciate any questions directed to me.
Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you so much, Elizabeth Wathuti, for that wonderful lecture. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Now we'll be moving on to the Q&A portion of our event, where our audience members and viewers are welcome to ask any questions or comments they might have for Miss Elizabeth Wathuti and her work. If anyone has any questions, they can submit them now in the Q&A section of the Zoom feature. One question that was submitted in the chat earlier was, how can US students get involved in your work?
Thank you so much. I will highlight a number of things that you can do to get involved in our work. And of course, one of them would be to be present and amplify the work that is already being done in African countries. And I have highlighted an example of what we are doing at Green Generation Initiative. And I know that I probably will have the links of our work shared, and then people can be able to really also share out there and pass the message that a lot is already happening in Africa in terms of addressing climate change. Young people are already stepping up, and the solutions that the world is looking for to address this global emergency is already something that young people in Africa are working on. And so that is one thing that you can do, is to share the work that we are doing to reach out as many people as possible. And I know that there are networks around the US also that focus on making sure that young people are being part and parcel of conservation. So in this case, we are always open for partnerships and collaborations. And we wouldn't even mind opening up chapters in the US for a similar program where young people can continue to engage in the programs that I've mentioned. And like I have mentioned, it is not about being in a place that is the most forested. We are also focusing on urban schools, people that live in the cities. How can we make sure that our cities continue to remain green, clean, and resilient? There are so many things that we do with young children in the cities to remind people that you can still get connected with nature through the challenges that we are witnessing right now. Some of us got connected to nature by feeling the love for nature and being able to see the value that nature has for us. But there are also people that get connected to nature by seeing challenges around them and deciding that we are going to give nature a chance. So those are some of the ways that we can really support. And I think maybe I'll just also type in the websites on the sites, and you can be able to read much more about the programs. And I would be happy to really connect with anyone who would want to collaborate in some of these programs. But really the most important things is to keep amplifying the voices of young people in Africa that are trying to do something, and also that are taking action on the ground, because some of the challenges we face as young activists from Africa as well is really not being able to have that voice to really pass our message across to the world. So for any person to really also support would be to make sure that these voices are being heard out there, and that you're amplifying our work, and also letting the world know that actually action is happening on the ground, and young people also want to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have another question from David. How do you see media and the arts, in particular music and film, help spread the word on this cause and create a call to action that is effective?
I see media as one of the most important platform and one of the most important stakeholders that really can help pass this message across about how we also handle the climate crisis. And I would say that the COVID-19 pandemic has also really taught us much about how we can handle the climate crisis. And you can see how all of this information about the COVID-19 pandemic has been broken down even to people at the local level in my country and in my community really understand the challenges that we have that are caused by this virus. And I see media really also playing a key role when it comes to conservation and the climate crisis, in also making people understand the challenges that we are going to face if we do not do something about climate change right now. And also, of course, in making sure that the stories at the grassroots levels of people that have to deal with the worst impacts of climate change, but are resilient enough and are doing and are every day trying to work on solutions, then those are the kind of stories that we really want to also begin seeing in the media. We want to begin seeing the world understanding and seeing Africa for the solutions that are happening, and even beyond the challenges that we see in Africa. Possibly there's so many stories about food insecurity in Africa, about poverty in Africa, but we want also the media, I believe, can play a key role in highlighting stories of young people, stories of community, stories of women who are every day working on solutions to tackle the climate crisis impacts around them. And really, this is some of the ways that we can also get the world to see climate change as an emergency, to see climate change as a crisis that we need to start working on right now.
Thank you. We also have another question coming in from Abraham. He asks, is it possible to separate environmental and climate conservation efforts from politics?
So that's a great question. And I think it's a question that I always get asked. For me, I see environmental conservation as a question about leadership, as a question about governance. And environmental conservation is interlinked with so many other issues. And perhaps maybe by politics, you maybe mean issues to do with governance. And I think that is how I'd like to really emphasize on it. So we cannot talk about environmental conservation and not talk about governance. We cannot talk about environmental conservation and not talk about issues of equality, issues of peace. And all of these issues are interlinked at the end of the day. So I see people saying that maybe as a climate activist, you should not get involved with issues to do with governance and leadership, but really the decisions that nations are making today and committing to today are really going to be determined by the kind of governance that we have in place. If we have the right leaders in place, then we will make the right decisions that are going to positively impact our future. And if we have the wrong leaders that are governing us, then definitely the decisions are going to be wrong and they might definitely negatively impact our future. So we should get concerned. And that is why every day we tell people to also vote, really be concerned about the leaders that we are putting in place. And sometimes when we say these issues, I know there's always the aspect of young people being told that maybe when they become older, they will take up leadership. But really, I see young people as the leaders of today. And you should really be concerned about governance. If environmental conservation is a concern to you, you should never assume that it is an issue on its own. It's also about governance. It's about all of these issues. It's about equality. Because right now we are in two crises at the same time, the COVID-19 and the climate crisis. And really the countries and communities that are the most vulnerable to climate change, like countries like mine in Africa, it means that we are having to deal with two crises at the same time. And really it's a challenge of inequality as well, because these are the same countries that also we are seeing the challenges with access to vaccines for the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, if you look at all of these issues, they are interlinked and we can never separate issues of governance and environmental conservation. So really, I don't think we should separate. I know people do separate, but we should not separate all of these issues. They are interlinked, and if we need solutions, we have to really make sure that all of these issues are interlinked in our policies, in the decisions that we are making, and also in the kind of solutions that we choose to tackle.
Thank you. We have a couple questions that just came in. Let's see. We have this one from Andrew. We hear a lot about challenges and failures in fighting climate change, but can you tell us about some of the successful initiatives in Kenya at this time?
Great, thank you so much. So apart from Green Generation Initiative, there are so many other initiatives that young people are doing every day. And I would like to highlight one where young people are really also focusing on making sure that we protect and revitalize the green spaces around our cities. And of course, just to give a good example of Nairobi City, where some of the challenges with development, we've seen young people stepping up to say that, no, this is our green space and we need to conserve it for ourselves and for the next generations. And so young people are taking up spaces that have been degraded or other spaces that had previously been converted into other uses like, you know, infrastructure, and then converting these spaces into green spaces. And of course, this is a challenge that really is not just about them going to the place and even starting up, you know, beautifying the place. It's also about the law, because some of these things that we are doing right now, you find that a space that once used to be a community garden, or a space that once used to be even a playground, a space that once used to be a park, has been grabbed and is being converted to other uses like, you know, constructing of roads or building infrastructure. And young people are stepping up and asking our leaders to really not carry out a type of infrastructure development that does not have a balance with green spaces. And they're now converting these places into green spaces. And I'll give practical examples of young people that I've worked with who have taken up a riparian space that was once a really polluted river flowing with plastic waste. And that place is now a community park where people go to rest and enjoy, because they have planted bamboos along the banks of the river. And that means that the water is being purified, and also the trees around the place make the place look beautiful. And they've even gone to an extent of putting up benches where people can sit. And that is just one example. I know of another youth group that we're working with that also has been able to transform a slum into a beautiful park as well for the people that live in the informal settlement areas. And they can go to that place, enjoy, and the children can play. So young people are really just picking up and identifying with challenges around them and then deciding to come up with solutions. And another thing is we are also transforming some of the roundabouts that really are degraded and making sure that these roundabouts are beautified again, and also the people and the businesses that operate around that roundabout are able to adopt it and really continue to take good care of it. So these are just some of the practical examples that are happening around my country. And of course, even just to highlight a project that is happening around Africa, you've probably heard of the Great Green Wall, that Africa is, you know, planting trees and building these trees of wall to stop a desert. So there are so many challenges that are happening, and really it's just about the fact that these solutions are not being brought to the limelight for the world to understand that there are things that are happening on the ground. So you can imagine what would happen if we choose to amplify all of these challenges and move to the places that do not even have access to technology, and make sure that we are highlighting what they're doing and letting the world understand that these people are not just affected by climate change, but they are also on the forefront of climate action, and they're working on solutions each and every day.
Thank you for that. We also have another question from David, who asks, how do we secure support for green projects in Africa?
Great. I think part of that question I had responded in the past, but just to also highlight, I would say green projects in Africa, of course, need support, especially in terms of resources, because projects need to really be scaled up for them to have a wider impact. And if you are to scale up any project, then you will need resources. You will need to have partners. You will need to collaborate with people that have the same vision to be able to even add more aspects into that project. But really the most important thing that we can do really is to make sure that these projects that are already happening are being scaled up. And I would say that we need to invest in nature. We need to invest in nature-based solutions that people are working on right now. And of course, investing in nature-based solutions, meaning that we can make sure that the resources that are needed for that project to have a wider impact are provided for. Because sometimes it's been challenging, and I'll give an example even for Green Generation Initiative. Sometimes it's really challenging to also really make sure that you are providing also enough tree seedlings for every child in every school, because some of the schools have even about 2,000 school children. And if we are to run the Adopt a Tree campaign, which makes sure that every child in every school gets a tree to plant each, then that would mean we will need about 2,000 tree seedlings on the minimum for this particular school. And these tree seedlings are not are not really cheap when you're buying them as one of them. But if you have like a tree nursery, which this is a project that really also we are looking to focus on and just make sure that we're also producing our own tree seedlings. And this would mean that we will have a wider impact and be able to produce more seedlings on a large scale. But really, these are projects that we can support to make sure that we are either supporting with more ideas on what you feel can be incorporated into the project on top of what is already happening, and also introducing us to collaborators or people that would want to partner in a similar project, or even like I mentioned about chapters, if you would want to really have similar chapters and continue to support the project from wherever you are, and at the same time really also invest in some of these green projects because they need financial support for them to have more impact at the end of the day.
Thank you for that. It looks like we're almost out of time, so we'll have to wrap up our Q&A section of the event. I'd like to thank you, Elizabeth, so much for coming here today, sharing your story with us, and speaking to everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And just want to remind everybody that Elizabeth will be joining us, right, for the storytelling on Thursday.
Yeah.
So that will be a casual journeys of hearing personal stories with the other keynote speakers that is being co-hosted by the UCLA students. So we're so excited. But Elizabeth, it's so wonderful. You are a big, beautiful tree, and we will continue to adopt you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your wonderful keynote. Thank you, Alia Elias. She is actually a political science major at UCLA and Earth Rights Institute intern as well, for moderating the Q&A. And thank you everyone for coming, listening, and for your fabulous questions. We will take a 15-minute break and return at 10:15 for panel 1. We'll be hearing from students at UCLA on projects that they're doing around sustainability. We encourage you to come for that panel to support our students. And actually, if you'd like, you can just turn off your microphone and your video and just stay on, because this is going to be the link to join panel 1 as well. So we'll see you at 10:15 a.m. hopefully. And at the same time, we ask you to ignore us while we do a little bit of check-in with our next set of panelists.
Good morning.